Hello, Dr. Paul. Thank you very much for joining me on the first episode of the Amir Zen Show, where we discuss health, politics, and freedom. I wanted to have you on as my first guest because it was your positive influence that led me to devoting my life to health, politics, and freedom. How are you doing today, Dr. Paul?
I'm doing well. I'm delighted to be on your program and wish you best of luck.
Thank you so much. So, given how healthy and full of energy you still are at 89 years old, you're still regularly doing interviews, giving speeches, and doing your own daily show, the Ron Paul Liberty Report. So your views on the intersection between health, politics, and freedom are more needed now than ever, given the trend that America is shifting to make America healthy again. So I'd like to ask you some questions I don't hear people asking you very often, which are related to your expertise in health as a medical doctor, your lifestyle practices, and how that influenced you in politics. So first, I wanted to ask you some personal questions about your healthy lifestyle, starting with, what does your daily diet and nutrition look like? Do you have a specific dietary blueprint you follow? And do you take any supplements?
Yeah, I take supplements and I take vitamins and a couple of medications. So, but over the years, I went from I believe along a strong belief in allopathic medicine, but I'm much more interested in some of the more natural things. But I'm not rigid. A person that says anything that can help a person by taking some pills, I'm not rigidly opposed. I'm not opposed to all, say, all the shots, for diseases and things, and none of the vaccines. But I'm not against all of them. So I try to modify that. But I was raised before I understood medicine or anything else that one of the best treatments for everything that ever ailed me was exercise. My kids know about it. Go exercise. And that has a psychological benefit to it, has a health benefit to it. And I think, is the best tranquilizer you can find.
Well, that's a perfect transition into my next question, which was, I know you exercise very regularly, and that's amazing to hear that exercise is so important to you. So, what does your fitness and exercise routine look like? And how often are you still exercising at your age?
Well, I exercise a lot every time I have a chance when conditions permit it. When somebody in the family is ill, like my wife right now, it might be restricted under those conditions. But no, for years, it's just recently I had to change it a little bit. Every morning was started with trying to walk 2, 3 miles, and then maybe swim in the afternoon, maybe ride the bike in the afternoon. That has changed, I would say, in the last year for various reasons. But I still strongly believe in that and encourage people to do it. But for a long, long time, decades, literally, it would be walking, swimming, bicycling, the whole works. And so I might do that 3 different times during the daytime. And it was always very beneficial to me.
And is that something that you can see yourself starting up doing daily in the future, or are you kind of done with that portion of your exercise standards of doing it that often?
I have to, well, I try to do it that often, but the other conditions that I mentioned, the social conditions, I have to modify it. I had to change my bicycling because we built a house that was closer to a major highway. It used to be we were in a neighborhood where I could just go to the garage, get on my bike, and start riding. So it says a few little things like that, and other responsibilities have altered my activities. But my goal is still, I haven't done this much lately. My goal in my mind is I need to do more of this and this. So I always assume that next year I'll be doing more exercise than I'm doing this year.
That's amazing. That is great to hear. I ask these questions because there are a lot of people who are getting older and not doing these practices. So, many people focus just on physical health, but mental and spiritual health are just as important. So, what role do faith, philosophy, and a strong moral foundation play in building a free and healthy society?
Well, most of it is through the study and my background, my family life, and I was raised in a Lutheran Christian family, and it was very important. But so I think if somebody asked me once about, well, you don't say a whole lot about it, and I just, you know, I want to balance about my spiritual beliefs. I think they're important, and when people want to know, I really want to do that by demonstration rather than saying this is what you should do. So I'm not much into that. I don't. I use the word. I don't carry my religion on on my sleeve, but I think it's very very important. Matter of fact. In my political speeches in recent years has turned much more to fully understanding and talking about natural law over government law, and I think that is important because the more I read about, even prior to history, that people knew and understood right from wrong, and you shouldn't. And it's very libertarian. People basically believe and understand. For the most part, is that you shouldn't lie, cheat, steal, and kill. And that's sort of a libertarian position too. It should be a good political position, but what I dwell on when I start talking about we as individuals should not lie, cheat, steal. It basically still exists. Governments, at least they have a pretense of that. So the government has a role in the people who are out shooting and killing people. But my point in talking about this is government plays a slim role in it. They don't do a very good job because they might, on occasion find some bad guys and take care of that problem. But I think that they don't realize that the real lying, cheating, and killing occurs by our government. Yes, right now we're looking at the government, and there's some healthy things going on where the committee is looking into all the waste and fraud, and that's good. But governments, in the midst of all this so-called transition to eliminating, bad government, there's still the foreign policy, which is interventionist. We're still bombing people and killing people. We're still running a welfare warfare state where we steal the money from people. I see it more as a moral issue than I do as a military issue because it's something that has existed for a long time, and people do not separate the two. That says that if you can't do it as an individual, why are we as a people so complacent by allowing the government to do this? They steal the money from us, and then they go out and start a war and send our kids over there to be killed for nothing. And it's been on and on. That's why over these years, thinking about my, moral beliefs and religious beliefs have coincided and are very similar to my political speech beliefs, my political speeches, because that is of nonviolence. And so I have a moral basis to that, as well as a pragmatic political position. I think it'd be a nice place to live. When I gave these speeches, and you may have heard them if you came to my speeches, I would talk about how terrible things were, and yet at the last few minutes, I would say, it's not that tough. We it's not complicated. Most of the time, a lot of young people come and say, yeah, I think it's just, a lot of common sense on what you're doing. So I think that it isn't complicated. It's so wonderful. We should put a positive spin on it. And I tend to be optimistic because you stated that you've been to a conference or a rally or two of mine. I saw that nothing but positive, even though I talked about, tough time. And one time I asked one of the students, I said, why do you come to me and talk about and praise me for talking in a positive way about our Constitution? I said the other member, the other debater, they essentially said the same thing. Oh yeah, we really believe strongly in the Constitution, all that. I said, why aren't you talking to them? I thought it was an interesting answer. They said we don't believe them, and I think that's very important. I think that part of this political and moral issues has to do with credibility and telling the truth, and that's why that's why looking back at natural law, I think it's very, very natural, good and evil. It's out there, and people know what's right and wrong, and it's just a matter of something that's been there for the history of mankind, and it's a struggle. But there's been good and bad, and people know about it, and I think it's something that is worthwhile working for. And even though sometimes we complain, well, even right now, I say, well, yeah, they look like they're cleaning up the mess in Washington. I say, yeah, but really, are they going to follow through? And but that doesn't slow me up in making the point, because I see chaos on the streets. I said, maybe the cultural Marxists are winning, because they want chaos in the street, because they want to usher in the age of socialism, radical socialism. And then I get to thinking, well, chaos in the streets means that it's not working. And I think that's why it has elicited this effort on Trump's part to try to change things, because it's not working, and we're bankrupt morally and financially. We're bankrupt, and people are starting to recognize that. So to me, that's an opening. That isn't to close the door on it. Some people say, you can't do it. And the people who really oppose you are the ones who don't want to believe it, and they're strong believers in nihilism. You can't know truth, and so they don't even want to mess with it. Others would just like to ignore it for personal reasons, like political power and financial gain. So those are the obstacles we have, but I think it's an opportunity for our message of liberty to prevail.
Amazing answer. Thank you for that. And that transitions me into my next question, that many people argue against using political action to advance the message of liberty. However, to me, it's become evidently clear that government policies directly control things like public health, and the success of the Make America Healthy Again movement suggests that influencing policy through government is a crucial strategy. So what political strategies or policy positions do you believe that we should adopt to ensure that Americans continue the trend of being healthy?
Well, I think that's all secondary. I think developing the philosophy of independence and self-reliance is most important, and where our liberty comes from. And then where the ideas are there, because for a long time, communism was written in the books. It was ideological. For a long time, Austrian economics, like with Mises and others, it was strictly philosophic. But now it's being invited. So I think ideas have consequences, and good ideas have good consequences. So, but then when it comes to the issue, it should work into the philosophy, the personal moral philosophy, of nonviolence, and defend it, in that matter. I always argue that, that one of the least interesting argument in Congress was, they wanted to tell you it was practical. It was a political argument. You can gain more votes by this, or it's a financial thing. And I always thought, well, no, we want to do this because it's the right thing to do, and that is a big difference. And once a person grasps the simplicity of what liberty is all about and the self-reliance, I think it's very easy. I was mentioning the fact that if I talked for 45 minutes and told young people how terrible the situation was, that the last part I usually talk about the wonderful answer found in the simplicity of personal liberty, and that would satisfy both religious beliefs and social beliefs and political beliefs, and that everything can be answered from that. So I want to start with a philosophic answer. That's why tinkering on the edges of food stamps for the rich or the poor and saying, well, we just reduced it by 10% or something like that, because if the principle exists, just think about it in the reverse. When they started the income tax, it was like 1 or 2% on the rich. Oh, that sounds like a great idea. Then actually, one time it was up to 90% of taxes. So it's the principle of the argument, and that's why the Constitution is important, especially when they ignore when they ignore the Constitution, and they do, because it should be there. But ultimately, people know right from wrong, and once they grasp that, they don't have to depend on the politicians. The political system is not a good place to start. That should be the end point of the work people do. That's why I'm as much involved in education as I am in politics. And yet I ended up in Congress for a long time, but I never expected to go. It was never my goal to go there. And it was shocking to me that young people would come to a large number of young people would come to me because I it didn't have a political approach to it, and I was so delighted and excited about it that when I would offer this better answer to the chaos that we have, that I thought young people would say, yeah, I don't want income tax. I don't want people telling me how I live my social life or my religious life. They really like libertarianism. I thought, when I told them, but there's a catch to all this. The responsibility falls on you. You're the individual. So if you experiment with social things or financial things and you get into trouble, you can't go crying to the government, who can use force to try to straighten out your mess by going and taking liberty or money away from other people. So, and you know what? I thought I got as loud applause for that as I did just telling people what was wrong. But I think people want to know what's wrong, and they want to know there is an answer. But if it's just tinkering on the edges and saying, well, we're for peace, but we like the war in this period of the world more than the war over here. So it's the big principles that count. Interventionism, excuse me. Interventionism is bad. We shouldn't grant the power of government to intervene in our lives like they do. So the other thing is the interventionism also means that the authoritarians get in charge. We open the door to authoritarianism, and that's a disease. And then when the extreme happens of that, they become nihilists. Their biggest enemy is telling the truth. Truth is treason in an empire of lies. We live in an empire of lies, so that's why, like right now in our Congress, we have Thomas Massie up there standing firm. And they say, well, this will ruin your career, but Thomas Massie will be known if he never was in office at all again. They would remember him for how he stood up for the truth. So so I think it's so wonderful that truth stands out. And it's not like you have to go out and raise billions of dollars. And I keep thinking, an idea who's come, it can't be stopped by armies. And I believe that's true. Ideas used to spread by pamphleteering, word of mouth. But now, and I've just been introduced over these last decade or two about the magnificence of the internet, but also of the evil of the internet. So I look at that, but I like even some of the stuff that I do now, I reach more people in one day than I did the rest of my life. Sometimes it'll be 1 million people or something. Where do they come from? So I'm excited about that. But I'm also excited about the idea that when people see and hear from somebody spouting off the truth, that people are impressed. I think that's great.
That's an amazing answer. So essentially, start with yourself, look in the mirror before you go to the big top and try to fix things that aren't directly related to yourself. Dr. Paul, I have one final question. I know we're on a time limit. Again, thank you for your time today. So since I first discovered who you were in 2007, the message of freedom went from being ignored, laughed at, and told is impossible and will never happen. They've told me that a bunch of times, more times than I can personally remember. And now, seemingly, the message of liberty is a normal mainstream conversation, even at the highest levels of government, which tells me that the trends in America are finally moving towards freedom. Ideas like cutting trillions of dollars from federal spending, avoiding unnecessary and unconstitutional wars, decentralization, and abolishing federal agencies are now seriously discussed. Patrick Bet-David mentioned in an interview he did with you recently that you have thousands of disciples. So my question is, how can the liberty movement continue growing this momentum that we started building in 2007, thanks to you, of course, over the next 10 to 20 years so that we can achieve a truly free and voluntary society as soon as possible?
Well, there's no one way for everybody. I kid, but I'm serious. Do whatever you want to do. You're doing something. You're getting ready to start a program, and you're going to get a lot of people listening. You have no idea what will happen to it. So everybody has a responsibility. I believe that it is. It's a voluntary type of responsibility. But if you come to the conclusion that you believe in something and you have the best confidence that you can, that it's the right way to go, one has the responsibility to spread that message. The best part about that is you can have a lot of fun doing it and a lot of satisfaction. So that's what has to happen. That's why I've been involved in homeschooling. That's why I ran for Congress. I got very upset with the ridiculous changes going on with the Federal Reserve and the destruction of money. And now people are really starting to talk. We still have a long way to go because the empire has not been dislodged and the power of the dollar is still there, but it's showing signs it's on the last legs. So that, I think, is participating in that, is spreading that message. But to tell or expect people to do it all the same way, I don't like it when somebody says, yep, I really like what you're doing, Ron. I want to do exactly what you're doing. I'm going to run for Congress. No, you don't want to run for Congress just to be in Congress. You want to. Leonard Reed, who was the head of the Foundation for Economic Education, he says the most important thing we can do as an individual is self-education. I figure I had to spend more years unlearning the things I learned in government schools than I'd spent in schools. I mean, it's ridiculous. That's why I'm delighted with what's going on about changing the Department of Education. But that's just a start. And just think, I marvel at how well educated the founders of this country were. It was fantastic. If you read how much education it had, they didn't have any government schools. Can you imagine such a thing? So no, there's a lot of good stuff out there, but it depends on the individuals, and that's why I think morality and spirituality and the understanding of natural law is very important.
Amazing, amazing. That's a great answer. Everybody has their own individual journey. Dr. Paul, thank you so much. My final question for you, just something personal. Dr. Paul, I just turned 37 years old. So just quickly, if you can go back and give your 37-year-old self advice, what would you tell yourself?
Well, let's see, what was I doing when by the time I was 37, I think I discovered that I think I got involved indirectly, not with the big issue of liberty by itself, but the monetary issue. It fascinated me. And I told myself, wow, I need to study this and I need to play a role in sound money. And the longer I studied and understood it, it wasn't simply money. It had to do with everything. The corruption and with the dollar. It finances all the things that we talk about, whether it's welfare, warfare, and criminality and all the killing going on. So that is, I would have told myself that continue education. I continue to do that. And the one thing I want to continue to do is, to the best of my ability, to spread the message of liberty.
Perfect. Dr. Paul, thank you so much for being here with me today and joining me on episode 1 of the Amir Zen Show. I'm very grateful for your positive influence in my life. So I just want to thank you again for being such a positive influence and teaching me personally and many, many other people in this world so many positive lessons. Thank you again for your time, Dr. Paul. God bless you.
Good, Amir. It's great to be with you today.